Welcome to FDA Imports, cross-border compliance with attorney Benjamin L. England.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to FDA Imports, cross-border compliance with attorney Benjamin L. England. Ben is a seasoned regulatory attorney and the founder of FDAImports.com, where he helps companies around the world navigate the legal maze of FDA oversight and international trade. I'm Sean O'Connor, and today we're going to be talking about something that's on, well, certainly if you're in this business, it's on your mind, it's on your lips. The tariffs, the Supreme Court rulings, President Trump. Ben, I know you've got a lot to say about this. Welcome to the program. It's good to see you.
Thanks, Sean. Great to see you too. Glad I could be here and help.
Yeah, I mean, I love the timeliness of this. Give us a basic sort of quick overview of like what just happened and what the ramifications are.
Sure. So Trump, you'll recall, last year began the process of instituting all sorts of new duties, new tariffs on lots of different countries, virtually all of them, and most of the products that they export to the United States. And so there were tariffs such as reciprocal tariffs. You would hear Trump talk about the fact that we're getting robbed. Why? Because they charge us 49% and we only charge them 5%. And that's unfair. And so he using a particular authority, it's called iEBA, which is it stands for the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. He used that authority in order to create new tariffs. And those were the tariffs that were issued in the Supreme Court. The reciprocal tariffs were the ones that applied to virtually every country. But then you would have perhaps recalled hearing about the fentanyl tariffs, right? The tariffs that had to do with China and Mexico and Canada that just were not doing enough to stop fentanyls from coming in. And he used iEBA for that also. And then there were the Brazilian tariffs, and these were the tariffs that Trump put in based upon the relationship that's been going on for quite some time. And they had to do with Trump's view that there were too many non-tariff related barriers to entry for U.S. companies into Brazil, as he used iEBA for those tariffs. And the last one were the Russian oil tariffs. Any country buying oil from Russia, then they had their tariffs increased, all under iEBA. And these were all challenged in the Supreme Court. On February 20th, 2026, the Supreme Court knocked down Trump's tariffs, basically alleging a finding that that iEBA was not a valid basis for any tariffs. So all of them. Now that particular case had to do with reciprocal tariffs, but because the Supreme Court found that iEBA is not a proper ground for any tariffs, it automatically swept all the rest of the tariffs away as well. And so it was a big win for industry. Importers have been paying billions and billions and billions of dollars in tariffs since these were instituted just around April 1st. You'll remember Trump talking about, it's the Freedom Day for America because of all the tariffs. So that's the case that we're talking about.
Yeah, and so for me, I'm definitely a layman in this space, so I've got a couple of questions, and hopefully they don't, they're not overly simple. But first of all, the Supreme Court rules on, strikes down Trump's actions. Does a memo go out, so to speak? You know what I mean? Like, so many companies and industries are impacted by that. How, is it just a matter of, you have clients, obviously, that are they just, if they're paying attention because it's their business. And so then what do they do in response to that?
Let's think of it this way. But to get to the Supreme Court, somebody had to sue in the Court of International Trade, which has exclusive jurisdiction over things like tariffs. It's a special court, a federal court. And then if you lose in the CIT, the Court of International Trade, then you would appeal that to the Court of Appeals in the Federal Circuit. So that's the next level up. And then if you lose and you don't like it, you go to the Supreme Court. And so that has to back up, right? All that sort of backs up, because the question is, do I get my money back? Well, the answer is probably eventually, right? But a lot of things have to happen. And that is that the cases now have to sort of like unwind back down. And an interesting thing, in spite of all of the opinions There's a CIT opinion, Trump lost. There's a Court of Appeals, Federal Circuit, Trump lost. There's a Supreme Court case, Trump lost. Trump has lost 3 times. None of the courts have said refund the tariffs. Not a single one of them, right? So customs have never been ordered to refund the tariffs.
So then does that put the onus on the companies to essentially file a petition or whatever the process is to try and rake back that money?
Yes, and I'm not sure if you have heard in the news, but Trump has basically vowed we'll litigate this for the next 5 years, and by the time we get out of the next Supreme Court cases, you guys, half the companies will be out of business because they were tired or whatever, or you'll get tired and just forget to do something. So the expectation is that the administration is going to try to drag this out as long as possible. Yes, you have to actually take some steps in order to get your money back. The problem is, there's no real bright line as to what those steps are. There's a couple of different things that a company might do that ordinarily to get your money back when the wrong duty was paid, but it's unclear whether those actually work. And so there are other lawsuits actually that were filed yesterday and also the day before in the one in the circuit, the federal circuit, and then also one in the CIT asking the court to tell customs to give us the money back. So FedEx brought one action, and then another group that was the original plaintiffs in the Supreme Court brought an action in the federal circuit. So there's tons of litigation that actually is still happening.
So a question, you mentioned FedEx, which I know is as a a U.S. corporation, but obviously they're multinational, global. Who's the main beneficiary of the ruling in terms of getting their money? Is it U.S. companies and companies that we do business with abroad? Is it a whole mix? Because I think some people may be hearing like, oh, well, a bunch of companies in Brazil are out a bunch of tariff money, but U.S. companies are fine. But it doesn't sound like that's the case.
Yeah, it's a good question. It depends in one sense to the degree to which the foreign suppliers contributed in trying to cover the tariffs. For instance, they might have reduced their costs. They may have reduced their inputs to reduce the amount of money it costs them to make the goods, to try to make up for it, and then reduce prices to the importer. They may have even contributed to paying the tariffs. It's possible that the foreign companies that are not importers, you can be a non-resident importer of record. You can be in Brazil and be an importer in the United States. If you're the importer, you paid the tariffs. The company that pays the tariffs is the one who gets the refund. Now, whether the importers share that upstream, like the supply chain, is going to be really between the importer and the foreign supplier. But the foreign supplier, unless they're an importer, can't bring an action. It will benefit them in the future because they wouldn't have to worry about the tariffs going forward. Although Trump, of course, has added Section 122 tariffs. He's already sort of shifted gears, going the same direction, just changing lanes.
Mm-hmm. So, in the case of, speak a little bit to, I suppose, some of the clients that you're representing, maybe a couple of examples. What are you advising them, or you on their behalf? What strategies now are you taking to stay ahead of this? I know there's a lot of uncertainty still.
Sure. So there was original cases that were filed in the Supreme Court that made their way up, and our clients, as well as many other law firms, talked to their clients about filing what's called a Me Too lawsuit, where basically they went into this Court of International Trade and said, yeah, me too. Nothing more than that, right? They're arguing the same thing. These are my facts. These are my goods. These are the tariffs I paid. I have Brazilian and I have reciprocals, or I might have fentanyl and Russian oil, whatever, right? And you make that claim in the CIT. The companies who did that before the Supreme Court ruling are going to be in a better place in terms of getting their refunds than companies who haven't done that yet. But it doesn't mean you can't do it now. We're advising clients, if you haven't, do it. Because there is going to be a time frame where we expect the courts will roll these cases all up into one. And you want to be in that roll up because that's going to be the first refunds, if they ever come, are going to come to those companies. So we are advising people to quickly file Me Too lawsuits. There's other things too that are more procedural with customs.
Sure. I mean, class action comes to mind for me, where like these are being brought together, although it's a different situation. But you had mentioned some companies had already, I'll say, filed with CIT. Is that just they were proactively saying, hey, I don't think these tariffs are constitutional or legal? Was that why they've already filed?
Yes. There's a question as to whether the procedural mechanisms that usually would work with customs to obtain refunds are going to apply. So we've been telling clients to take a belt and suspenders approach. So clients are going to want to sue. They're going to want to consider filing protests with customs, and these are more procedural. If you've already sued, then you're going to get rolled up into a consolidated case. We expect the courts not to want to hear 950, 200,000 of these cases, right? Because there's thousands and thousands of importers who paid duty. So they're going to want to find a solution that doesn't involve them hearing all those cases. So consolidation is likely. And you want to be consolidated because that means you got to get in court. That way you have a chance of getting your tariffs refunds more rapidly. Companies that don't get rolled up into a first consolidation can still sue, and they can still defend their rights. It's just going to take longer. There'll have to be a second consolidation, probably a third consolidation. Those you're just pushing back when you can get your refunds.
Just this whole situation, is it just going to be happening in the background, or will this potentially have supply chain issues? I'm thinking, back during COVID when, literally, and in the wake of that, there are just tangible supply chain issues happening and, increasing prices or certain goods unavailable. Is this scenario likely to have that kind of an impact, or is it really just more of an accounting issue, financial issue?
Well, it's mostly a financial issue. I wouldn't expect there to be a lot of supply chain issues. I will say that, Trump came out and said, fine, Supreme Court has its view. We're going to litigate it. In the meantime, I've moved over to this new section for new tariffs, and that's going to be 10% or 15%. Customs came out with a memo, an instruction on Monday, saying that there's going to be Section 122 10% tariffs virtually across the board. And what that does is you think about the yo-yo effect that has, seesaw effect it has on companies in the marketplace. It goes from I was paying 35%. Supreme Court knocked out Trump's tariffs. I'm paying 0, possibly. Now I'm paying 10, right? And that uncertainty will create problems in the supply chain, but not like with COVID.
Right. Yeah, that's certainly. The markets hate uncertainty, and so it's either way. It's gonna wreak some havoc. A lot more to talk about on this. We have run up against our time for this particular conversation. I anticipate a part 2. For people who are interested in this. For those of you listening at home, if you need help assessing your risk or responding to a seizure, any issues around tariffs, import, export, visit FDAImports.com to get expert guidance from Ben and his team. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode if it helped, or if you've got colleagues out there in the world that really are interested in this topic. Ben, thanks a lot. I'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks so much, Sean. Take care.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.